Hey, y'all. It is so lovely to see you. Thank you for being here on what I hope is a beautiful Oregon day. Welcome, welcome. We're at 10:01 and we're going to get started. Just to let you all know, we are recording today, and it is a beautiful day to learn about Oregon social science resources. My name is Sandra Lubinano, and I'm joined today by my colleagues at West Ed, Gabriela Montesi, Jackie Pang, Andrea Browning, and Kelly Meacham. And West Ed has had the great pleasure of collaborating with the Oregon Department of Education to create a suite of resources to support the implementation of the 2024 social science standards. And I will pass it over to our colleagues at ODE to introduce themselves and ground our time together.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thrilled you all are here with us today. I'm Vanessa Martinez, she, her pronouns, and serving as the Director of Standards and Instructional Support. And that's where social science is nested at the Department of Education. And I'm really glad that you all are here to bring your curiosity and do some learning around all the beautiful resources that have been developed in partnership with West Ed. And so just really appreciative for that partnership and that work. And also just very appreciative of the legislature. So just really want to start off with that Senate Bill 1050 allowed us to provide these resources with this one-time funding. And there's just some great learning and some great tools that teachers can implement right away. And thrilled to kind of give you an overview of what that will look like in this space today. And also really thrilled to partner with OAESD, ESDs, and our RENs who have been really instrumental. We've had really successful summits across Oregon in sharing and highlighting and talking with educators and doing some shared learning with one another, and just thrilled to be in partnership with them. And so I'm just going to extend it over so you get to hear and meet some of those wonderful people and turn it over to Kelly.
Hi, everyone. Kelly Hildebrandt, Program Administrator with the Oregon Association of ESDs. And thank you for taking time to being here today. And a big thank you to ODE and West Ed for your work and also for including and partnering with ESDs to help us be leaders and support our districts effectively. So hello, everyone, and I'm going to turn it over to Amit.
Thank you, Kelly. My name is Amit Kabrowski. I'm the social science specialist at the Oregon Department of Education. I see some very familiar names and faces on the screen here. So please reach out if you have any questions or any ways that ODE and the social science can support your educational service district, your school districts. We're really excited about sharing these new resources as well as continuing to support for all our social science teachers. So thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rebecca Barr, she, her pronouns, and I am the Ethnic Studies, Holocaust, and Genocide Program Analyst at the Department of Education, working closely with Amit to support the rollout of the new social science standards. And it's a privilege to be here with all of you this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks to our ODE colleagues for introducing themselves and grounding us. And thank you so much for sharing in the chat some information about yourselves as well. I see some of my favorite social science topics, so keep them coming. We are really meeting today, as Vanessa mentioned, because the Oregon State Board of Education adopted new social science standards. And these standards introduce significant changes that provide guidelines for rigorous social science teaching and learning, including the essential disciplinary practices and in focusing on expanding the narrative. And so our session today presents an opportunity to really interact with the suite of resources specifically related to the Creative Canvas modules, which we're really excited about, and to engage with your Oregon colleagues in a brainstorm about how we might leverage these resources to support Oregon educators. And so when we are leaving today, we hope that you develop an interest in ideas for utilizing these resources, And then also build and strengthen your knowledge of the existing resources that you have at your fingertips to apply today to professional learning. So for our agenda, next slide, please. We have gone through introductions and reviewed our purpose. Next, you'll hear our colleagues review some of these amazing resources that we have for you, and to preview the new webpage that we're all really excited about. We have a case story that we'll share with you about how one school utilizes these resources in tandem. And then most exciting, we'll have an opportunity to independently explore some of these resources and then regroup as a collective to really discuss how we might leverage these resources for collective learning. And then we'll close out our time together. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Jackie Peng, to introduce you to our suite of resources.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sandra. I'm Jackie Peng from WestEd, and I'm seeing all of these awesome responses in the chat and just feel compelled to let you know that I am personally a fan of teaching the French Revolution. But I'm super excited to share with you some of the resources that we've curated and put together for you all as a part of this project. So today we're going to preview the resource library. We can go to the next slide. And the resource library houses the suite of resources to support standards implementation. And so what you're going to see depicted here will be housed on the Social Science Frameworks webpage, which will be live at the end of this month. But you all are going to get a sneak peek of those resources today. And today, because there are so many resources and we have quite a limited amount of time, we're really going to be focusing in and giving some specific attention to the resources that focused on Holocaust and other genocides. But please know that we do have a wealth of resources that really address the depth of the 2024 standards. So the resource library, when you navigate to it, when the website is live, you'll find has the online resource library, which I'll take you through in just a moment. Some spotlights and slide decks. We'll be giving you a peek at what those look like. There are also Canvas-based digital learning modules, and my colleagues will be talking through that in just a moment. And then also something that accompanies those Canvas-based modules called collaborative learning guides. And so again, we'll be giving you a sneak peek at each of those today. The first thing I'm going to talk about, though, is the online resource library. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So you'll see that the resource library is going to be searchable by topic, grade band, and resource type. And so this is just a mock-up of what it will look like once the web page is live. But these resources include things like specific guidance for educators as well as school leaders, lesson plans. There are recordings of webinars that have been offered as a part of this engagement over the last 6 to 8 months, and also professional learning. And so again, these will be searchable by grade band as well as by topic, so that for educators and other school leaders who are looking for something specific, you'll be able to hopefully identify them and find them very quickly, and then gain access to them. There are going to be over 70, almost 80 specific resources, in addition to some other particulars that we'll be sharing with you in just a moment. So we're really excited for you all to be able to dig into those at the end of this month. We can go to the next slide. Another type of resource that you will find in the resource library are something that we're calling spotlights and slide decks. And so these are professional learning resources for leaders to use in order to support groups of teachers learning together. So spotlights and slide deck topics include genocide, including the Holocaust, for grades 5 through 12, civic engagement and citizenship for grades K through 5, civic engagement and citizenship for grades 6 through 12, migration and movement for the K-12 band, and then civilization, empires, and colonization for grades 6 through 12. And so, again, these will be resources that folks will be able to access. And a use case for these might be, or how you might want to use these with the folks that you are working with. So, an instructional coach may want to access these to provide professional learning for a group of teachers, and then engage those teachers in a discussion using the slide deck in a 45-minute session, and maybe print some copies of the snapshots to circulate and hand out to the groups. And so again, those will be resources that are already prepared and already curated so that you don't need to, rush around and make slide decks to accompany these things. They will already be available for you to access and to adapt as you see fit for the groups that you're working with. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Gabriella, who's going to talk about the Canvas modules.
Thanks, Jackie. So on the next slide, the next resource we really wanted to highlight were the online Canvas modules. So these Canvas-based digital learning modules are self-paced and were created to help teachers explore ways to integrate standards-aligned social science content and effective practices within their classrooms. So there are 6 modules that align with 6 different course topics. The first being cultural diversity, community, and identity for grades K through 12. The next focuses on genocide, including the Holocaust for grades 5 through 12. We have 2 different modules that focus on civic engagement and citizenship. One is for grades K through 5, and the other is for grades 6 through 12. The next topic focuses on migration and movement for grades K through 12. And then the last topic focuses on civilizations, empires, and colonialism for grades 6 through 12. So an example of how these online Canvas modules may be used is that a principal or a school leader want to provide their teachers with professional learning, specifically regarding integrating diverse narratives into their instruction. So they share a link to the cultural diversity, community, and identity course with their staff to complete asynchronously prior to an all-staff meeting. And then the next resource we wanted to highlight today, on the next slide, please, are the collaborative learning guides. And these are a set of collaborative learning guides that are companion resources to the series of 6 of the 6 Canvas modules. So you'll find one guide for each Canvas module topic. These guides provide suggestions for structured discussions and activities to support learning in collaborative group settings. And each of these guides include a summary of the module, selected module activities for bringing those practices to life within a classroom, and then also suggestions for applying the content and practices from each module to specific grade levels. So an example of how these guides may be utilized is that a principal uses a guide to host an interactive professional learning session in a follow-up with a group of teachers who have already taken one of the online courses. Next slide, please. And then finally, there are a plethora of additional resources that educators, school leaders, and other community members can access and use. Today, we wanted to highlight a few of those resources that educators from the field have particularly resonated with so far. So some of these additional resources are high-level overviews of the key revisions to the social science standards. The first being fact sheets. So these provide informations about specific topics, including teaching ethnic studies, genocide and the Holocaust, tribal history, and then traditionally underrepresented groups. In addition, you'll also find an FAQ document that has answers to common questions about the standards. And then finally, we also wanted to highlight the family and community resources that can be used to communicate and orient caregivers to the standards. So an example of how these resources may be used is that a teacher shares out the family and community resources in addition to the FAQ document to inform families about the 2024 social science standards before engaging in dialogue with them before a back to school night. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Sandra to just outline the case story that you can find.
Thanks so much, Gabriella. And so now we have the opportunity to step into a case story about how one Oregon school utilizes these professional learning resources in tandem to strengthen the knowledge and capacity of educators. And the story is also anchored in one of the key topics that Jackie mentioned in the 2024 standards, genocide, including the Holocaust, particularly for grades 5 through 12. Next slide, please. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that case story. We'll engage in a shared read aloud of this case story, and I'll ask a few participants to help me give voice to the narrative. Some folks, I'm just looking at won the ABC lottery near the front. And so Erin, Amy, Angie, and Emil or Emily, could you help me do some shared reading? And if you can just do an okay in the chat and maybe gargle some water and thanks so much, Erin. Appreciate you. And before we begin reading, we've crafted a guiding question for us to process the case story together. How does this case study mirror your current practices or hopes for professional learning? Awesome, Erin. And if folks feel okay, otherwise we'll just go down and continue down the list. Appreciate you all. I'll start us off with the first paragraph.
I guess, Sandra, should I ask which Aaron were you referring to? Because it looks like Aaron Gaston is the one who's replying.
That's true. Aaron Cook, if you could help, and then also Aaron Gaston, if you would like to chime in right afterwards. We'll continue down the line. Appreciate you both, Aarons. All right. So this is the instructional materials case study. To support the implementation of the new 2024 social science standards, a high school launched a series of professional learning activities focused on key themes and topics in the standards. To determine where to begin, the instructional leadership team, composed of the school administrator, an instructional coach, and key teacher leaders, administered a teacher survey highlighting several topic areas from the standards that educators are expected to teach. The survey results revealed that the topic of the Holocaust and other genocides was one where many teachers had questions about both content and implementation. Aaron Cook, can I pass it off to you, please?
The school began its professional learning with a 45-minute session led by instructional coaches during a staff meeting. Using the genocides, including Holocaust 512 slide deck, the coach introduced foundational concepts from the new standard and facilitated a discussion on how to approach these sensitive and powerful topics with high school students. These sessions served as an entry point to begin educator reflection and learning. The instructional leadership team also shared the genocides, including the Holocaust grades 512 snapshot document, for departments to use as a quick reference guide to support instructional planning during their professional learning communities.
Thanks, Aaron Cook. Aaron Gaston, can I pass it off to you, please?
Sure. To deepen their understanding, the principal invited educators to complete the genocides, including the Holocaust 512 Canvas module asynchronously. The course offered deeper pedagogical and content knowledge with a focus on historical conditions, survivor testimony, systemic injustice, and strategies for teaching these topics with care and critical insight. The module also provided educators with opportunities to explore local history and community experiences, pointing them toward regionally relevant resources, oral histories, and organizations offering programming aligned with the standards.
Awesome. Emily, can I pass it off to you, please?
In their next follow-up professional development session, school leaders used the collaborative learning guide, Genocides, including the Holocaust 512, to lead an interactive discussion and take a closer look at one of the module's key activities. Teachers shared insights from the module, particularly local connections they had discovered, and explored ways to bring community cultural wealth into the classroom, including survivor stories, local historical perspectives, and culturally responsive teaching practices. Activities like incorporating community experiences and analyzing primary sources helped guide collaborative planning aligned with the standards.
Amy, will you round us out, please? Maybe Amy. Angie, would it be possible to round us out? All right. Oh, go ahead. Oh,
I can tag in for Angie if she's
thanks,
not
Jackie.
able to. Yeah. We're in the last paragraph, yes?
Thanks.
During and after these professional learning experiences, staff made use of Oregon Department of Education and Social Science Resource Library on their Instructional Frameworks website, which houses a curated collection of lesson plans, professional learning guides, and resources to foster awareness about the 2024 standards. The library became a vital support as educators translated their learning into instruction that fosters historical understanding, empathy, and civic awareness.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks to all of our readers. We hope that this served as an example of how this case study or this one school has really dove into the resources in tandem to build capacity. Any other ideas of how this resonates with your current structures or hopes for professional learning? We'll hold on to that thought and maybe we'll grease the gears of exploration through some just time to spend with these resources and explore how they relate for your context. And so if we could go to the next slide, please. And then the next one. All right, so we've created a Padlet that has descriptions and links to the types of resources that we presented in our case story and that our team has overviewed. We have decided to focus on the one social science topic, genocide, including the Holocaust, though these types of resources exist for all of the plethora of key social science topics that Gabriella and Jackie had listed. You'll see the link in the chat to the Padlet. Thanks so much, Andrea. And we have 15 minutes to independently explore and consider the following guiding questions during our time together. While you're exploring, feel free to insert comments on the Padlet about some ideas that you have for building capacity. And we can check in around 12 minutes to see how we're doing after some exploration. Some of the following questions that you might consider are: what resonates with you about the resource you're exploring? What wonderings do you still have about certain resources? And how might you utilize a resource to support the implementation of the 2024 social science standards? Can we just get a quick thumbs up if you're able to access the Padlet in the chat? Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Thank you so much, Christoph. Great. Appreciate you, Stephanie. All right, great. If you're having any problems accessing the Padlet, feel free to message us and let us know. Otherwise, we will check in about 12 minutes and engage you all and see how you're doing in exploration. All right, y'all, I'm gonna fade out our lo-fi elevator music and bring you all back. If you haven't had an opportunity to share some thoughts and some ideas for how you might utilize these resources, please do so either in the chat or Padlet. I know colleagues and our team would really benefit from hearing them. So now, Colleen, if we could share, please, those guiding questions. Actually, you know what? Let's just put them in the chat so that we can see one another. If anyone wants to pop on the microphone and speak to how these resources resonate with you, any questions that you have about them. Thank you so much for your engagement.
Yeah, and I put those in. Actually, Aaron just came off mute, and that's great. I was going to surface a couple things I saw in the Padlet, but Aaron Cook, let's hear it.
Yeah, just from a technical background, it would be nice if these had an easy way to get to the common cartridge. So if, for those of you who don't do the technical side of this, the common cartridge would allow it to be added to any LMS. So if a district had Canvas or if a district had Schoology or any of the other LMSs, it would be nice to, like, I have access to Canvas. It would be nice for me just to be able to grab that class, those modules, and put them in my Canvas instance. So I had access to them, so I don't have to navigate back to the state. Now, they wouldn't be updated, and I understand that, but if I were actually teaching this as professional development to teachers, or if I was going to give access to somebody else, I could put it through the Southern Oregon Canvas Commons, and they could actually load those modules themselves. So having access to a common cartridge easily would be nice. I don't know if you loaded this to the Canvas Commons. That's kind of a nightmare because it's every Canvas user on the planet. But if we don't have a state one, which I don't know that we do, it would be nice to have access to a common cartridge so people could use that, especially if they are non-Canvas users, to be able to load it into their instance.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Erin. I think that's something that we can investigate with our Canvas team. I know that this website is open access and easily accessible through multiple users, and they don't have to have a Canvas account. And there is an overview in the very beginning if folks haven't utilized Canvas before as an introduction to Canvas and a walkthrough. But I agree that that would be really user-friendly, and we can explore that. Andrea?
Right. So
Yeah.
the main thing is you can't remix it though. It's on your guys' Canvas site. So if we can actually have the common cartridge, we could pull out snippets from it and use it as a teaching metaphor instead of having access it through the web.
And Erin, I'm going to follow up with you directly. I'm fairly certain this will be something that you can download an instance into your local system. And that way you could have user credentials, user sign in and things like that. I know in previous courses we built with ODE, there's a set of instructions for that. So thank you for bringing that up. And I've got a note to myself to confirm that and figure out what those instructions look like. So they're easily handed off to you and a technical person can follow those few steps to take the cartridge and load it into your own Canvas instance.
Thanks, Andrea. I also noticed that Emily had a really great question, and Jerry, about the talking points and facilitation notes for the slide decks. I'm going to pass it over to Gabriella to share a little bit more information.
Thanks, Sandra. Yeah, so I commented back in the Padlet, but did want to just surface that there are facilitator notes in the deck. So just some ideas on how to engage with the PowerPoint. And we will make sure, and the facilitator notes will be accessible with the decks that are uploaded to the website. So just wanted to highlight that there will be facilitator notes. So thank you for that question.
Emily, do you mind if I pass it off to you? You made some comments about the Canvas modules and that hopefully it'll help educators feel a little bit less overwhelmed. Can you see some use cases with these modules?
Yeah, I just really liked that in that introduction that the key revisions, I think, can hopefully help ground educators before they jump into what can feel like overwhelming work. And I think that's what I've been hearing from a lot of educators is that it just is all very overwhelming right now. So I think that that's really good. Another question that sort of came up with this is, my guess is that the idea behind the Canvas module is that it's just sort of there for educators and school districts and schools to use as they see fit, but not necessarily like required to do, I guess, all of the modules. Because the other thing I noticed is I think they would take a lot of time, especially with all of the extra supports that you've put in. I think too, the Canvas module and the collaborative learning guide makes a lot of sense to go together to do that independent study and then bring it to a PLC.
Yeah, thank you for those insights, Emily. I think these are not sequential by any means, and they're more topic oriented. And so educators can select the module based on their grade band or their interests or key shifts that they're focusing on. And thank you for highlighting that, because there are also spotlights about the key shifts, and those are going to be really crucial to help orient and ground educators in the key shifts that they're hoping to address. And then every single one of our Canvas modules do begin the introduction highlighting those key shifts so that folks can really just understand the the topics or the ways that they are shifting their emphasis and not their entire social science instruction. Anything else that folks would like to bring up? Andrea, I saw you come up.
Yeah, Sandra, I'm going to lift something up that I saw in the comments. Stephanie had shared a desire for more Native American focused resources at the high school level. And so, Amit, I wanted you to speak to that. I know there are some tribal history, shared history resources that are already available. And I think there's some expansion happening. But I know this sits across ODE. So anything you can share to give Stephanie some places to look or things to look forward to would be helpful.
Sure, yeah. So there are more lessons from what I understand coming out from the Office of Indian Ed to support tribal history, shared history. And so I think they like to hear when our districts are asking for more. So I will forward that to them as well. And then, of course, our local tribes are also producing lots of materials for each grade level, depending on the tribe that you're working with. And so that's also a good resource to check out.
I think Amit, Odie was also really conscious about the module speaking to empires, civilizations, and colonization, or excuse me, colonialism, and trying to expand the definition of indigeneity to not just a North American perspective. And so you'll find some resources there that really highlight, I think, some of the high school standards and provide a nice on-ramp to teaching them.
And you've got me again, who's minding the comments and the discussion in the Padlet. And so Jerry had asked, in terms of the resources, can those be shared that show the notes included? So for those slide decks, yeah, we're not going to publish them here today, but those with the notes included are what the version that's going to be coming on the published website at the end of June or first day of July. It'll be June 30th or July 1st. So those will be available for you, Jerry and others.
So just a comment, and I put it in the chat, but it feels like there's not a lot of resource there for non-Shoah genocide. I mean, there's some brief information there about Armenia and Bosnia and Cambodia and Rwanda. It feels like it makes it easier to extrapolate to a broader audience if they have a more global perspective on that potentially and how that's used.
Thanks for that comment, Erin. And we have a lot of emphasis on the Holocaust in that particular module because that was really the focus of the legislation that led to this project. But in the resource library, which we weren't able to post on the Padlet today, just because it would have been like 80 different individual links that you would have had to click on. In the resource library, there are additional like considerable resources about other genocides that do have a more global perspective. So there's a lot more representation in the resource library. And it'll be searchable by topic so that people will be able to hopefully find them pretty easily.
These are really thoughtful wonderings, and thank you so much. I think they really mutually benefit all of our shared learning. Any other wonderings or ways that you all see that these resources can be utilized to support educators in your region and area? All right. Well, without further ado, feel free to, add to the Padlet and we will try to address your comments. But I am going to begin closing us out. And if we could share screen again, that would be very helpful. All right. We hope you enjoyed this opportunity to explore the suite of resources that are coming your way. And that's not all. I feel like an announcer for QVC. There are some opportunities that Amit and Vanessa will talk about to stay connected and continue shared learning. Thanks, Amit.
All right. Yes, thank you. So, and going along with some of the resources that we have shared with you here today and are going to be launched in July, there's a couple things happening this summer. One of them is the Belfer Virtual Conference. So that's on Holocaust education and sponsored by the United States Holocaust Memorial and Museum. And so that's available online for educators starting June 23rd. There's a registration link there, as well as in the newsletter that just went out at the beginning of the month. And so if you're not receiving the newsletter, I encourage you to sign up and send updates to your readers for any updates that you give out. And then the Oregon Historical Society is also hosting some events this summer, including teaching a more complete history connections to our new standards. And so that's available for teachers in August. And then starting in September, I'll be hosting office hours for our teachers on the second Wednesday of the month, or whoever wants to attend, educators who want to attend those office hours. So look for that as well.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. All right. And last but not least, we have a link, a QR code to the OD's website. And apologies for the placeholder. This website is very recently live, and so you all are getting the most fresh sneak peek. But all of these materials and the courses are available for you all, and we're excited for you all to begin utilizing them to support Oregon educators. Erin, absolutely.
All right. And with that, I just want to say tremendous thank you for being here. We know this is the last week for many students, so this is like a really opportune moment to celebrate all the wonderful things that have happened this year and also do some forward thinking and planning into next year. And so just a reminder, right, we still have a year's worth of time before we are to implement the standards. So this is really getting us poised for that moment. And just appreciate all of you being here today. Can't think of a more important time to really center these standards in our classrooms and with our students, given everything that's going on in our country and in the world. So just appreciate all of you being here in that space and in that spirit. And thank you, West Ed. This is our final time. We close out with them on June 30th. So a lot of appreciation for the partnership and learning we've been able to do together.
And is there a link to this slideshow that you guys have been showing? It's the one in the Padlet is a different presentation.
We don't have one currently, but we will make this available as well as the recording for you all.
Yeah, we'll send up a follow-up with that.
Thanks, Erin, for your question. And thanks, y'all, for your engagement.
Thanks,
Great to see
everyone.
so many of you today.